If you practice yoga, could you potentially be worshiping Hindu deities?
Find out on this episode of LED Live.
Light exposing darkness.
What's up, everybody? Thank you for joining us for another episode of LED Live, and we got our guest Mike Shreve here again.
Good to be back.
Looking forward to some wisdom on this topic, but first we want to say thank you to all our donors out there. Without you, we could not have this show. This channel would not exist. So we love you and appreciate you so much, and you have been a blessing to us as well as many other people who get to watch this show for free every week. And if you want to support this channel, you can do so by going to littlelightstudios.tv and /give, I think. You can find it on the website. And also you can become a Patreon donor, which is a monthly donor. And you can also buy our t-shirts at lightwear.shop. You can really wear your witness. You can be a walking billboard for the gospel, and it might just spark up a conversation to help you break the ice on spiritual topics like that. So we want to get into, it says 10 yoga poses that offer worship to Hindu deities.
Right. When I got into yoga, I didn't know that was going on. I didn't know I was actually doing that when I assumed those poses.
Right. And I know a lot of people are like, well, I don't do anything religious. It helps my back. I do the stretches or whatever. What do you say to people? I'm sure you hear this all the time. People that say the stretches really help their back and stuff. I always say, you don't have to do yoga to do stretches, right? There is a difference.
No. They don't have a copyright on stretches.
Right.
So.
But there are certain poses that originate from Hinduism.
Right, definitely. Yeah. And the traditions are that certain poses are consecrated to or offered to specific deities. Mm. And people are oblivious to that for the most part. They'll go to a yoga studio, and I think the danger is this, that maybe the person involved in going to a yoga studio has the mindset, I'm just tuning up my body, I'm just getting better and fit, and more fit so that I can have a healthier life. And yet they get drawn in little by little into a worldview that is very non-biblical and non-Christian.
I hear that so many times. When I've heard testimonies of New Age, it always starts with, I was raised Christian, I started practicing yoga, and one thing leads to another.
Yeah, the word yoga means yoke.
To yoke,
And the implication is you're yoked with God. Mm. But the God you're being yoked with is an impersonal life force.
Is that Brahman?
Brahman with an N on the end. Brahman. And so the whole purpose of yoga is to have this spiritual awakening in your life where you achieve self-awareness, God consciousness, Christ consciousness. There's a lot of terms for it, but it means coming to a realization that you are God, which is the polar opposite of the truth.
So I'm going to be devil's advocate just for a second. How can a pose become a style of worship? You know what I mean? Because I've seen people. Granted, I've never been to a yoga class, but I have seen things on commercials and stuff where you're saying, okay, put yourself in this position, and then they go in and almost preach like a sermon, talking about how your body's becoming more with nature or something like this. Yeah. And that's dangerous. But how can a pose be dangerous?
I like the way you illustrate what you're saying. Actually, I don't think it's the pose that is as dangerous as the traditional belief that goes along with the pose. And then it's associated. And then it's connected in the mind of a person and becomes a portal to demonic influence in a person's life. Because I've seen kids kid around and say, do that, like they're meditating.
Because they see it in all these cartoons, the Lion King and
Lion King. Yeah. What was the monkey's
name?
Rafiki, yeah, he's sitting there like that. So it's a cool kind of trendy thing to do, not knowing that that's the Gyan mudra.
Mm-hmm. What? Really?
A mudra is a hand motion with a symbolic meaning that has spiritual power associated with it. And what it represents, the forefinger represents the individual soul, according to Hindu teaching. And the thumb represents Brahman. Atman. Atman is the word for soul. And then Brahman. And when you do that, It's a prayerful statement that as you meditate and do yoga, you will become one with Brahman.
Wow.
And so it's an invocation in the form of a hand
And
motion.
you will see like a lot of musicians and stuff throw that over their eyeball and making a 666 and stuff. I think it's all, associated.
And
So
so,
it's the
that's when it becomes like, here's a little kid doing
Yeah.
it right here. He's got his hands up like that. Well, that's so dangerous.
So it's not actually hand motion, but it's the idea that you're presenting in the hand motion that you get into your head that causes the danger, in other words, right?
Right. Well, that particular thing, somebody could be kidding around and do that and never suffer any kind of repercussion from it.
Right.
But if you're doing it seriously as a meditator, it's going to connect you with a demonic force.
Right, that's what I try to tell people too, and they're like, look, I saw that pastor, he was doing this hand sign, and it's like, look, sometimes when you're talking and you're trying to say, like, yeah, and you're trying to, your hands are talking and you're saying it was a very precise thing or something.
Well, you just did it.
Exactly.
You did
that's
that.
why I try
You
not
said
to.
precise.
This is how I got to talk because somebody's going to screenshot me doing that and say I'm part of the Illuminati or something. But the thing is I just tell people, look, there's a difference if you're taking somebody's gesturing while they're talking, or if it's like, hey, let's pose for a picture, and it's like if you're posing that way, then you're throwing it up for a reason. If your hands just do something in the middle of talking, then it's probably just
Well,
a gesture.
that child is in the lotus position, or not really fully.
Exactly.
His feet would be up on his upper legs.
Yeah, like an inverted cross.
If he was fully in the lotus position. But there's a reason they call it the lotus position, because that's a picture of the lotus flower there.
Mm-hmm.
And it grows in bodies of water where the
doesn't
root,
need
the
soil.
bottom of the flower is on the bottom of the pond, but the leaves and the flowers are up above the water.
Oh, okay.
And so it symbolically represents rising above the lower nature, because the root system is in real muddy, mucky ground,
So it's real
which
symbolic.
represents the lower nature, the evil side of human beings. And
Are you
so,
going to get into the chakras and stuff?
am I going to?
Mm.
Yeah,
Okay.
we'll mention that. The next pose that I can mention is a real simple pose. It's called the tree pose. And that's where you're standing with one foot on your upper thigh. And
Now the hands are in a prayer position,
Yeah, well,
so that looks religious just in that sense,
well, like the namaste gesture.
Right.
You ever heard that
Yeah,
or seen
namaste.
that?
It's like,
Where a Hindu or a yoga advocate or someone will clasp their hands like this and give a humble bow, which is kind of to use the word again, a humble and kind way of greeting a fellow human being. But to say namaste
right.
means I bow to the divine essence in you.
Wow.
Or I acknowledge that you are
Like
God.
I'm in the presence of a God, and you're doing it to each other, so it's like
That's
this
a totally
mutual
different
thing.
Yeah.
situation,
Very different. But this particular pose is dedicated to Vishnu. And Vishnu is one of the three main gods in the Hindu pantheon. And they believe in 330 million gods and goddesses.
Million.
Or at least that's the traditional number.
Yeah.
Every family can
Maybe it's
have its
grown
own
since then.
god. Every city can have its own god. But this particular pose, when people go to a yoga studio and they assume that pose, and it's called the tree pose, they don't realize that they are worshiping what is called the preserver god. You've got three main gods at the head of the pantheon. The first is Brahma, which is different than Brahman. It's no N on the end. Brahma is supposedly the creator god. Vishnu is the preserver god. And Shiva is the destroyer god. And we'll get to Shiva in just a moment. And there's some really shocking things about Shiva.
One thing I think about we were talking about is that the pose itself that's bad or whatever. I think you're giving a sign to the spirit world that you're inviting them in, aware or unaware. It's just like when you have a false god in your home. Like I used to have all these. I loved religious art even when I was not Christian at all. I loved religious art, so I had a crucifix, I had a candle with Jesus on it, I had a Buddha, I had this little goat, and all these different things. I just liked the way they looked. Now, when I became a Christian, I still appreciate art, so I had all these sculptures, and I was studying with this guy, and he goes, "I don't know if you should have those things." I said, "Well, it's not like I'm worshiping them, I just like the little statue of Buddha. I think it looks cool. And he goes, yeah, but I still think, you know, you should get rid of him. And so I you know, talked with God about that, and I felt convicted. Yeah, I need to get these false gods out of my house. And I did. I threw them away. And what I'm getting at is, whether you're doing something because it's art or whatever, I don't think we know the half of what gives Satan a right to come in, or demons to come in. And it could be some little statue. It could be you're doing a pose that links back to these false systems of worship, and Satan's like, all right, you're inviting me in.
Well, I believe there's degrees of danger. Like, you could have a yoga class where the teacher is a professing Christian, dedicated Christian. They play Christian music. No mention of Hindu doctrine or deities ever takes place. And all you're doing is physical exercises. There's a possibility that you could go through that without being contaminated. But I tell people I still would not do it.
Yeah, avoid the very presence of evil,
Absolutely.
right?
And because if I'm known as a Christian in the community, and I go to that yoga class, then I am endorsing yoga in a public statement.
You might influence another Christian to say, well, I saw my pastor doing yoga, and they go into some other studio.
They may go to a class that's not led by a Christian, that doesn't have Christian music, that doesn't have a Christian emphasis, and bam, they get sucked into a non-Christian worldview.
Causing a brother to stumble.
Yeah, it's the same
Avoid
thing.
the appearance of evil. Yeah.
So I tell people to break off. I've got a little booklet called 7 Reasons I No Longer Practice Yoga. I think we did a program on it one time. And that's one of the reasons.
Where can they get that book?
At thetruelight.net.
Truelight.net.
Thetruelight.
Thetruelight.net.
.net, right. And they can download my story about how I came out of yoga on that website too. Right at the beginning, when you scroll down, the second frame you come to has the booklet I gave you earlier.
Oh, cool.
The Highest Adventure, Encountering God. And I tell my whole story, how I was a teacher of yoga at 4 universities and running a yoga ashram back in 1970. Wow. Can you believe it's been 51 years?
Wow.
50, coming up on 52 years. Wow. All right, next pose. Next pose is the dancer pose. And I told you this was going to be a heavy one. This is a picture of Shiva, who is the destroyer god in Hinduism. Shiva is the one that causes the destruction and rebirth of the universe, you know, during cycles. In Hinduism, you have a cyclical view of the future because you go through ages that are, you know, unbelievable amounts of years, like 432,000 years or something like that. They're called yugas.
Oh.
And you go through these ages where you go from a golden age down to an age of complete debased living, and the world becomes completely corrupt. Then the whole thing is destroyed at a certain point and reborn again. But it happens over and over again. There's no final resolution to it.
In the Bible, there's a spiritual being known as the destroyer. Who's that?
Well,
he seeks to kill and destroy, right? So
yeah, I think that's the devil.
Yeah.
You know, people say angel of death went through Egypt. That's not what the Bible says.
Right.
It says the destroyer went.
Oh, okay. Yeah, but I was thinking of when it says he seeks to kill and destroy or something like that. Yeah.
And Jesus destroyed the works of the devil, so he destroyed the destroyer.
Wow, yeah.
But Shiva is called the Lord of Yoga.
Really?
The Lord of Yoga. And he's often depicted in a dancing pose.
Shiva's a he.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I didn't know
Yeah,
that.
he doesn't
I thought I've
actually
seen. Well, I
look
thought
like
I. Like there, he looks masculine, but I've seen
He had lipstick on.
female. I've seen female Shivas. I thought, and the name just sounds feminine.
Yeah. Well, it gets worse. You know the I can't remember the name of what they call it, but it's where they speed up on an atomic
Oh, the
level.
CERN.
Yeah, where they've got miles and miles.
Hadron Collider.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. The collider. But outside of that building is a statue of Shiva.
Yeah. What? And and the workers all did the Shiva dance
statue.
and everything, and like this ritual in front of it.
And so talk about synchronicities.
Right.
Destroyer.
The Lord of Yoga, who is the destroyer god in Hinduism, Shiva, is outside of a building that some scientists say could cause the destruction of the world.
I think Stephen Hawking said that you're messing with something that you don't know anything about. You could literally destroy the universe.
So anyway, every time a yoga advocate gets in that pose, whether they recognize it or not, they're honoring Shiva.
Wow.
It's an invocation to Shiva to come and manifest in their bodies and in their lives. Next, and this is a very common yoga pose, it's called the warrior pose. The warrior 2 pose is honoring Ganesha. And Ganesha is half man, half elephant.
Interesting.
And there's a myth about how that happened. Apparently, Shiva's consort, a goddess, created this being to be a guard at the door of their home. Shiva was away. And when Shiva comes back to the house, he refuses him entrance into his own home. So he lops his head off.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, bad news. And finds out this is a creation of his consort, like a wife, female goddess. So he sends his servants down to the earth with the order to cut off the head of the first living thing they come to. And unfortunately, the first thing was an elephant. They cut the head off, bring the head up to the celestial sphere, I guess, stick the elephant head on this guy. So for the rest of his existence, he's half man, half elephant.
Now, just for the viewers, where are these little descriptions? What source are you using? This isn't just your own biased Christian opinion, right?
No, I've got everything footnoted. In fact, if they want to see the article, they can go to thetruelight.net.
Okay.
And it's posted under writings, and they can get all the footnotes. And it's not just Christian sources.
Awesome.
It's original sources. Okay. If they do the splits pose, I'd like to see you do that.
Yeah, I was going to say, that'd be a tough one for me.
What about you?
No way.
If you do the splits pose, you're honoring Hanuman,
Wow.
who is the monkey god. And he's considered the god of wisdom, courage, strength, devotion, and self-discipline.
And again, with the praying hands looking up to the heavens and everything.
Yeah. So it all looks very religious and very connected with higher things.
Mm-hmm.
And
we see this one in
we
the
get to
music
Krishna
world.
now. Yeah, Krishna, of course, is a very revered Hindu deity. And when you make this stand, see the woman with her fingers like this is depicting playing a flute, because
she's the
Krishna is depicted playing a flute, and by the flute he attracts all these women who follow after him. See,
It's very much like Pan.
I know, that's what I was thinking.
Greek.
yeah, very much like Pan. But according to Hindu writings, I've met the head of the Krishna consciousness movement here in the United States, out in California, in Los Angeles. I spent about an hour talking to him. I also went to the Krishna temple in West Virginia and spent about 2 or 3 hours talking to the head Swami there. And unfortunately, I wasn't able to convert either of them. But why would you believe in someone who, according to their sacred writings, married 16,108 women while he was alive on the earth and had 10 children by each one of those women?
Wow.
So that's how many? That's 161,080 children. Where are they?
Oh, wow.
Where is that DNA passing down?
Yeah, right.
Half God, half
on
human.
Earth. Well, he's on Earth. Wow.
Yeah. So anyway, that decreases the believability.
So they believe that there's some of these like demigods on Earth?
You know what? I don't know that.
Yeah.
I'm not sure, but I would imagine so.
Yeah.
I would imagine they do believe that.
He would have to marry a wife every other day of his life if he lived 100 years. And
Did you just do that?
I did.
math?
And I was like, there's no way. Because usually people
No,
live
he
half-
married. I don't remember the myth exactly, but he married almost all of them at one time in one ceremony.
Interesting. The Beatles has a song,
But you can't have sex with every wife at the same time.
Right, my sweet Lord,
My Sweet Lord,
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, yeah. And everybody said, oh yeah, it's Lord about Jesus and all stuff. But no, I mean, it says My Sweet Lord, Krishna.
Yeah,
Krishna.
George Harrison wrote that.
He said he said hallelujah to make you have this false sense of comfort, and then he'd slip in the Hare Krishna in there. He said that, and then I've actually seen the Beatles throwing up this hand sign. So, yeah, they were huge
Some
into this
connections,
New Age movement.
Who would think by doing that in a yoga studio you're honoring a
Hare
God who
Krishna.
doesn't exist?
Can you zoom in on that lady?
Yeah,
I want
I
to
sure
see.
can.
'Cause I can't see her very well, and maybe we can't see her.
There
out
we
there.
go.
So she has the two, almost like the devil horns.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I noticed that too.
Throwing up the horns.
Fascinating. Huh, I didn't know that was
Yeah.
a sign. I wonder if that's where devil horn sign comes from.
Right.
I don't know.
Well, I think it's, Satan is cross-cultural.
Yeah.
That's a
you know?
mudra
Yeah.
Mudra. Huh.
again. Yeah. All right. The next one is
Well, there's the
now here is
Cutting off the
one
head.
that will shake you.
They got it.
It's called the goddess pose. Can you imagine assuming that pose? That takes a lot of physical prowess, I'm sure, to be able to do that and to be steady and balanced. But that pose, and in yoga studios, when they do the goddess pose, more often than not, they know they're honoring Kali.
wow.
And Kali is the most vicious,
War
vile goddess in the Hindu pantheon. And she's depicted there with a decapitated head. She's got her foot on Shiva, and she's got bloody hands, a necklace of skulls,
Wow.
and a bloody sword. Why would you worship that? There's Kali cults over in India that get into the weirdest, most evil things.
Something you said about the people who are doing this pose know what they're doing and stuff. It made me think about that these yoga studios are literally like a church that all their congregation comes to, and then there's one person everybody's looking to, like a pastor, and they're saying, hey, do this to worship God. But they're deceiving so many people that probably don't have any clue what they're doing.
Right.
They're like
Absolutely.
an evangelist for these heathen deities, and they're like, okay, everybody do this, and then it's like, yep, you're doing it.
But see, Kali becomes for them a symbol that is like a feminist symbol.
Oh,
Like
wow.
the model
Empowerment.
woman because she's got her foot on a man.
Yeah.
She's rising up above this God. I'm almost 100% positive that's a depiction of Shiva under her feet. So they like that empowerment.
Right.
I'm a strong woman, so I'm going to yield to Kali. That's Kali. But they're opening their heart to demonic influence and infestation. All you got to do for the crocodile pose, lay flat on your face and cross your arms like this, and you're honoring Rama,
Wow.
another Hindu god.
I noticed a lot of the blue gods, and it makes me think of that movie Avatar. Yeah. I wonder if there's some influence
probably
there.
a connection there.
Right. Well, the director of that, James Cameron, he says that he wrote Terminator too. He said that he got Terminator, the idea for Terminator, while he was sick and had a dream, and he dreamed about this metallic skeleton walking out of the fire. And back in the same time period, back in the Terminator days in the 80s, he had a dream about Avatar, which was that world was called Pandora or something like that. He had a dream about those luminous trees and everything, and he dreamed about the blue girl, and he said he had a painting of her, and he said, but the technology for movies wasn't good enough back then to illustrate what he envisioned. So he said, and later that became Avatar, a dream he had.
And I think he showed the paint like way long time ago.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and it's exactly
Yeah,
of Avatar.
blue female.
Ready for the next one?
Let's do it.
Sure.
This one's called the cat-cow pose.
It's like the cat puking pose. Hairball.
But anyway, it's the female deity Saraswati, who is the consort of Brahma. All the gods have goddesses. And she's supposedly the goddess of education and learning. So when you're doing that cat-cow pose and you bend your back in and bend your back out over and over, you're honoring this female deity. And then this one is a very recognizable series of poses. It's called the Sun Salutation, which usually a yoga session starts out with,
Right.
especially if it's on the beach or someplace like that in the morning. Then they'll do the sun salutation. And when they do, see the picture on the right, let me raise it up, is a picture of the sun god Surya, Surya. And the sun salutation, which is a series of 12 poses, is honoring Surya. So if you're in a yoga class and you say, I'm a Christian, and you go through those poses, you just honored a false god.
Right.
Because the sun is not a deity.
Right.
Of course, in Hinduism and many other religions, they associate various parts of the universe with different deities. Like the earth is Gaia, that's not the Hindu term for it, but they associate different deities with different parts of the universe. And God is not one with his universe.
I just looked up the dictionary term for salute. Salutation is a salute. You're literally going to this and they're saying, all right, we're going to do the sun salutation. And salute means a gesture of respect or homage or polite recognition or acknowledgement, especially one to or made by a person when arriving and departing. So you salute somebody, you're in the military, they're over you and you salute them. So you're literally saluting in respect and homage to the sun, and it's not even hidden. I mean,
and if you salute to an officer, you're making a declaration that you're under submission to his authority.
right.
True.
And they literally call it the sun salutation.
Now, in Romans chapter 1, verse 25, God said they have exchanged the truth of God for falsehood by worshiping and serving created things
Yep.
rather than the Creator. Praised be He forever. And that's the complete Jewish Bible version of that scripture, Romans 1:25. So quite often, various expressions of religion tend to focus on what they can see instead of what they can't see.
Yeah.
Instead of enduring and seeing Him who is invisible, which is what Moses did, they associate God with visible things because it helps them connect in faith, I believe. So yoga poses are invocations to Hindu deities, but what's really happening, I have another scripture here, 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verses 19 and 20. Paul was warning against idolatry, and he actually was referring to food that was offered to idols. And he said, what am I trying to say? Am I saying that food offered to idols has some significance, or that idols are real gods? No, not at all. I am saying that these sacrifices are offered to demons, not to God, and I don't want you to participate with demons.
Wow.
And of course, he went on to say you can't sit at the Lord's table and at the table of demons. What concord has Christ with Belial? What fellowship has light with darkness?
And that's probably the go-to answer for somebody that's doing it. Well, I don't believe in other gods anyway. There's only one God, but there's only one God. And I don't believe in these false gods, but you don't have to. They're literally demons.
Right, right. And that's why there's a source of power associated with it. See, Shiva has a consort, Shakti, and Shakti, the goddess Shakti, is supposedly the power that is at the base of the spine that they call Kundalini. You know, in yoga, the whole purpose of the asanas, which is the physical exercises, and the pranayama, which is the breathing exercises. And incidentally, the reason they do the breathing exercise, they believe that the essence of God is in everything, including the molecules in the air. And they call and the particles of the divine essence are called
breathing
prana.
in divinity.
Yeah, are called prana. And so as you intensify your breathing, you're heightening your awareness of God. But I have a little acrostic I use, YOGA, you only get air.
That's awesome.
You can't breathe your way into a relationship with God.
That's right.
But anyway, this power supposedly at the base of your spine is associated with Shakti. It rises up through meditation in serpentine fashion, like a serpent, until it merges with Shiva in the crown chakra. You know, they're imaginary, they don't exist, but supposedly 7 chakras in the body. And
Now, this is why I wanted you to bring up the chakras, because
I've got a picture of that.
again, it's not your Christian bias that says it's going up like a serpent. This is their own terminology.
Yeah.
They're saying that they want to get the serpent from their spine or the base to their crown. They want the serpent to go to their mind.
Well, the reason they depict it as a serpent is because just like a serpent rests in a coiled position, then it releases, and it's much longer, you know. So this divine essence, this essence of divinity, is dormant within every person like a coiled resting serpent. It's not really manifested in their lives. Their lives are all about working, making money, paying bills, having a wife, having children, getting food. They don't care about spiritual matters. But and so most people are bound to that living within the 5 senses and gratifying those senses. But they say when the serpent power is aroused, then Shakti comes into union with Shiva. It's like a divine marriage. It's like a sexual overtones to this awakening of consciousness. And it's dangerous. I have people call me from all over the world. They come to our website that you've already mentioned, thetruelight.net, and they see the testimonies there, and then they'll contact us begging me to pray for them because they've been in meditation classes and yoga classes and started having these weird manifestations. Kriyas, weird manifestations in their body and surges of energy through their body, and it drives them close to insanity.
I'm sure you've heard way more testimonies than I have about this stuff, but that's what I always hear is like, I started doing meditation or I started doing the yoga because it was good for my body or whatever, but then as I was doing this, I started having these epiphanies or visitations with ascended masters and things. It would happen just from doing yoga and meditation. They weren't even trying to do that. They weren't like, okay, I'm desiring to have an interaction with some kind of ascended master. It just started happening.
Yeah.
And then they get sucked into it because it's like, oh, this must be real. This is some reality that I believe in now because I've experienced it.
Now these are supposedly, again, they don't exist. In fact, the guru I studied under taught that the 7 chakras are just imaginary.
Wow.
He said they don't exist. They're just an aid to meditation. But you have the root chakra, sacral chakra, solar plexus chakra, that's the 3rd from the bottom, heart chakra, throat chakra, the 3rd eye chakra, and the crown chakra. And so supposedly as you do all of these yoga poses that we just went through, this awakening of the Kundalini is going to take place, and you can depart your body through the 3rd eye. And become one with Brahman through the crown chakra.
We did an episode on holy yoga. It was a lady, I think she's married to the guy who owns Pureflix or something like that. But she does this whole holy yoga class. It's Christian yoga. And I started looking into her website to see, is it anything Christian about it? And she said, I was looking at those chakras, like she's all into this chakra stuff as a Christian. And she said, and God showed me that right in the crown chakra, or right in the heart chakra, was the Star of David. And she's like, and I don't believe the Bible ever mentions anything about this symbol being in a good thing. I mean, it's a hexagram. It's an ancient occultic symbol. We've known it to be the Star of David and associated with Israel and biblical Christianity or whatever, but she said that God showed her that the Star of David right there in the heart chakra, and it was just like, she said it was like she wept and felt God and everything.
It was an emotional experience.
Holy yoga is a mixture of Eastern philosophy and biblical ideas. And I've heard Brooke Boone, the founder of in an interview she did with a Hindu guy, and she said there was nothing wrong with yoga back when she practiced it before becoming a Christian.
Wow.
I think she's a nice person, and I think she loves Jesus, but I think she's got a big mix going on of true and false ideas.
And that's the error that we have to be looking for in these last days, man. It's going to be so deceptive.
Mm-hmm. But, yoga means yoke.
Yeah.
And the Bible said, be not unequally yoked with unbelievers. But Jesus said, come unto me, all you that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest.
Amen.
He said, take my yoke upon you.
There you go.
But his yoke is not yoga.
Yeah.
His yoke is acting and reacting like he would in the same circumstance, learning his character, then becoming one with him in such a way that you can forgive like he forgave.
Amen.
And you can walk in humility like he did.
I mean, it seems like, I think it is, like a spiritual adultery.
Oh,
It
yeah.
is.
I
It
mean,
is.
because, as a Christian, we go over there and we go with another gods and everything. I mean, not knowing, right? I mean, that's the danger thing, like not knowing that you're doing all this practicing and you're thinking, well, that's exercise and everything. But literally, I mean, that's from different deities and
Yeah.
different gods. And the thing is that it's not just like a decent, loving God, right? I
Right.
mean, like a nice pagan God, you know what I'm saying? I mean, I'm not saying, it's right or wrong, but it's like,
Yeah.
just to see those pictures and all those.
Yeah.
Yeah, even just a
Destruct-
rational, secular person should say, why would I worship a God of destruction? or
I
whatever?
know,
Yeah.
right? I mean, it looks very
Ominous.
evil. Yeah,
Yeah.
very like, wow, what's going on, man?
Yeah, we're in a relationship, we're in a covenant marriage relationship with Jesus, and he says that the people, they went a-whoring after strange gods. I mean, this is exactly what's happening.
Yeah.
You're inviting in your mind, and like you were saying, like, man, later on you're gonna be hearing these voices, man, to do this and to do that, and worship this, and then somebody's gonna come to you and say, hey, we want to come to church. Nah, I don't want to go to church anymore.
I got to do my
I
yoga.
gotta do my yoga, or I want to go. I don't know. I mean, so I think we need to be really careful with that.
Amen.
A little stretching.
I believe if somebody really were to dig into this and see what the nature of yoga is, that they would never participate in a yoga class.
I agree. I think a lot of this is just a desire to want to know the truth about things. The stuff that we talk about on this show, anybody could research. I mean, where did the origins of superheroes come from? They'll tell you. They're Greek and Roman gods. I mean, it doesn't, we're not having to make this stuff up. They will tell you. Same with this stuff. If I've done it before, I've searched online, what is yoga? First thing it says is it originates from some religion,
Well, even Hindu leaders say there's no Hinduism without yoga and no yoga without Hinduism.
Exactly. You can't
They say
separate the
it's
spiritual. Yeah.
Yeah, and Jesus very clearly spoke against the practices in his opening sermon, Sermon on the Mount, Matthew 6:7. He said, use not vain repetitions as the
There you
heathen do,
go. Wow.
for they think that they'll be heard for their much speaking. And why did he call them vain repetitions? Because it's a vain attempt at becoming one with God.
Wow.
If you were going to communicate with a friend, would you step into the living room where that person was and repeat the same thing 1,000 times in a
Right.
monotone voice to earn their attention?
Wow.
Or would they throw you in the loony bin?
Right. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. God's a personal
if
God.
you would not approach a fellow human being with that kind of mechanical approach of chanting a monotone chant with the same words over and over, like a wife chanting to her husband, please take out the garbage, please take out the garbage. All she's got to do is go in there and say, honey, would you mind taking out the garbage?
You say yes
sufficient.
because I love you.
And God is a person. He's
Yeah.
not a machine, and it's not something you manipulate and control with the right incantation.
That's right.
But
Wow.
and there's other things. We talked about the third eye in the close of this little teaching. What people attribute, and let me see if I can get it on my computer. I think I've got it right here. People say that Jesus taught the third eye because of a scripture that they pull out of context. And that's Matthew chapter 6, same sermon, Sermon on the Mount. Matthew chapter 6, verses 22 and 23, he said, the light of the body is the eye. If therefore thine eye be single, thy whole body shall be full of light. That's the King James Version, because other versions don't convey this idea. But if thine eye be evil, thy whole body shall be full of darkness. If therefore the light that is in thee be darkness, how great is that darkness?
So they're
And
saying
so-
this eye of light is the third eye. What do they think about this
they
evil,
believe
though?
that's the third eye. Huh?
What do they think about when it says, if thine eye be evil? So your third eye can be evil or good?
Yeah, you can have evil psychic powers or righteous psychic powers. If the third eye is activated, if the third eye is functional, then you have perception powers on a level that normal human beings don't have, or at least that's what they teach. And they think that Jesus was, in a very esoteric way, revealing that he believed in the chakras. But that's what you call, instead of studying this passage in the context, it's not exegesis, it's eisegesis, where you're making this mean something else by pulling it out of context. Because if you go to the verses before this statement, it's all about being a spiritual person instead of a material person. He starts off by saying, lay not for yourselves treasures upon the earth, where moth and rust does corrupt, where thieves break through and steal, but lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust doth corrupt, and where thieves do not break through nor steal. For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. The light of the body is the eye. In other words, your perception of what's important in life.
There you go. Makes sense.
And if you think wealth and riches and material things are important, then it's going to be darkness in your life.
Yeah, it's almost like, so isn't there a verse, it might even be in here, where it says, where your heart is?
Well, that's what he just said. Where your treasure is, there will your heart be also.
Yeah, so what you focus on is where your heart's at. If you're focused on that car, that's your heart, and that's not a good thing.
And then after he says, the light of the body is the eye, if therefore thine eye be single, thy whole body shall be full of light. Then the verse after it, he says, you cannot serve God and mammon. If he was talking about a chakra, he would have said to his disciples, you need to meditate for hours so that you can become aware of this energy center that needs to be aligned. But instead he said, you can't serve God and mammon. He's not talking about a spiritual energy center. He's talking about being a spiritual minded person. And then he went on to say, no man can serve two masters. He will either hate the one and love the other, or else he will hold to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and mammon. Now, the complete Jewish Bible translates the word haplos, which is rendered differently in the complete Jewish Bible. See, the word that is translated single, if thine eye be single, in the King James Version. In other versions, it's if thine eye is sound or true or good or healthy.
Sense. Yeah.
You know, if you have a good outlook on life, if you have a sound way of perceiving what life is
so
about.
This is probably truer to the original Hebrew or Greek, I guess.
And in the complete Jewish Bible, the same passage is rendered this way. The eye is the lamp of the body. So if you have a good eye, instead of if your eye be single. If you have a good eye, that is, if you are generous, your whole body will be full of light. You'll live a fulfilling life.
Yeah, that makes a lot more sense.
A human being that sympathizes with others if you have a good eye. But if you have an evil eye, and then in brackets it says, if you are stingy, your whole body will be full of darkness. And that fits in with the context. It's contextually correct to see it.
That's why it's good to look at context as well as look at a concordance. If this is, confusing to you, which it was to me, honestly, when I saw it, I still don't understand the whole single part. You just brought it out. In the original Greek, it's not single, it's more sound or true, which makes a lot of sense.
Or healthy. Good. If you have a healthy outlook on life. So anyway, that's all about yoga poses and all about chakras and all the stuff associated with yoga that makes me want to flee from a yoga studio.
Amen. We are told to come out of her, be not partakers of these sins, and be separate from the world. A lot of the world is going into this stuff. Thank you so much for sharing that, the dangers of yoga and how it's potentially giving homage to deities like the sun and all these pagan gods. If you know somebody that's into yoga and you don't know exactly how to tell them what's wrong with it, we hope that this was beneficial to you, because that's what we try to do on this show, is to educate. We want to give you those answers why something is dangerous, why something is bad, and to make that decision on your own to stay away from it. So thank you again, and we want to tell people that they can go to your website at
thetruelight.net. And incidentally, there's lots of stories there of people that were in the depth of studying yoga. One guy, Michael Graham, was a personal student of Muktananda and lived in an ashram in India for 20 years.
Wow.
Another woman was a world-acclaimed yoga teacher who was one of the teachers in an ashram in Australia. And she recently gave her heart to the Lord, has a phenomenal story. So anyone who is a sincere seeker after truth, these are not people that just went to a few yoga classes and decide, now I'm going back to my Baptist church or whatever.
Yeah.
You know, these are people that seriously went after the Far Eastern New Age worldview and found out they can only be fulfilled in Jesus. And that's thetruelight.net. Lots of articles, lots of podcasts, TV shows, all kinds of resources on that website that will help a person make a decision for the truth.
Awesome. We are so thankful for that resource because I know it's going to help so many people. Well, thank you guys so much for being with us again this week. If you were blessed by this, please give us a simple, free thumbs up. It really helps get this out there, get into the algorithm so many people can see it. And like I said, we cannot do this without your support. We love you guys, and we thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time.